Okay. Are you ready?
This way.
That's it. 3, 2,
And oh shit, I missed it.
Brilliant. Well, I know I'm super excited to do a pod about the election results. Steve and I were slowly starting to discuss it while we were saying hello to one another before starting the recording. And then I was just like, no, we need to get recording this now because this is what people are wanting to hear. What were you just telling me just now, Steve?
I said I have to eat humble pie. I cannot believe that Nikki called the MK's dominance in the polls. Sorry, this is gonna flicker in and out. I think it's got to do with the ventilation in this booth. I'm sitting in a
Sorry.
booth in my workplace. Um, I actually cannot believe it. They got a lot of votes. And then I saw on TikTok or Twitter, because the news source is TikTok
Yeah.
mine, that there was the granny heist. The granny did like a mass heist, set of heists. There were grannies who were dressed in ANC regalia and they all voted MK.
Great, Bernie. Well, that's one way to get around the ANC voting, I guess, because remember, one of the big contentions is that's elderly generation voting ANC, and that's why they'll retain power and, kind of like legacy votes. And also people are scared to not vote ANC. I mean, I don't know personally because I've never been in a township environment when voting, but I heard from a friend of mine who spoke to their nanny who lives with them. And she said that in the areas where she's voted in townships, there's actually no covering. So it's not private, really. You know how you go into a booth to vote. Apparently in townships, it's not there. I mean, I don't know how, because I thought the IEC box is one thing, unless they cut it off. So it's all open, so people can see who you vote for. That's why people are scared to vote other than ANC. But I suppose, what kind of conspiracy theory, dress in the ANC outfit and then go vote someone else?
But how I found
Yeah.
the process, I found my process very quick. Like, remember, I was still looking for my ID. Like, my morning was so dramatic. And I went to the Westlake Community Hall. They pointed me where I needed to go. I was out in under 10 minutes. You spent 2 hours in the line.
I was there 2 hours by the Takai Community Church, which is also not that far away.
No, we're 5 minutes away from each other. But I'm not registered to vote there. That's why I registered to vote in Westlake.
Well, did you
And
hear
they
also
still had
about
my
a lot of
name.
people who had registered in different areas, but then once they got to the polling station, their name wasn't there. They'd even checked like on the IEC before, and it said in other places or previous places they may have voted, but also past couple of years since last elections, people have moved. A lot of people have moved. And so they changed it on the
I'm
system.
one of those
Apparently
people.
and then it didn't reflect. And yeah, so a lot of people actually also were not able to vote. They were turned away. Imagine waiting. Imagine I waited 2 hours and then I couldn't vote. There were people who waited 5, 7 hours who finally got to the front that could not vote because they were not registered at that station.
And the reason for this is also because I saw, oh shit, sorry, let me take this off. We need to blur this. We've got like some company branding. I wear my access card around my neck because I lose it.
That's I also put mine around my neck. I also wear mine.
Because I still don't have a bank card because I lost it. But the gag is like, oh, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought now. Oh yes, the IEC's budget got cut, right?
By 2 million rand.
That's a lot of millions. And so you see how that affected them because they're actually normally very organized, very smooth. The process is efficient. And the ANC voted in favor of cutting that budget. And then there's the other conspiracy theory with the voter rigging, and you called that as well. And I pushed back and I was like, there's never that. Yes. You really did call that. Like, it was good foresight. So eating lots of humble pie, but another humble pie that I'm eating is, how did the DA retain so many votes?
Yeah, that was very interesting. But just quickly before we start spiraling into the other ones, just off MK, I'm actually not surprised with them winning 15%. If I'm being honest, like, it scares me and it worries me. But I'm not surprised. And you can see that direct correlation with ANC going down by 15% in the polls from last time to now MK having 15%. So actually, we have to kind of thank MK Party for coming through, because possibly if not for them, ANC would still have a majority.
I don't think so. I think those votes would have gone to the EFF. I think so, because I watched the debriefing with Malema and his party. They had a briefing on Saturday. I watched it. I was streaming it, and he was saying that because their votes didn't grow if you saw them, right? So
which was
they
surprising.
remained. He said he knew why. Because they had a lot of student votes and a lot of the youth are voting for them. The young people are voting for them in their numbers.
And also just have a moment for the one person in Urania who voted for EFF. There's I'm pretty there's a wild manhunt in Urania right now who had voted for the EFF. That person is playing with a life. He is an adrenaline ticker. Takes you on explaining who Urania is. For those who don't know,
Urania is basically an Afrikaans. I don't want to say a Bantustan, but like it's an Afrikaans state essentially, where
white
only, where they essentially did like pulled a Western Cape. I don't know where the province or the Orania is situated. Is it in
Northern Cape? They're in the Northern Cape. So yeah, they also have their own currency. Did you know that? Yeah, Orania has their own currency. Yeah, so they're part of South Africa. I don't know why they even vote in the elections then, which is because they seem so far removed. But they are completely ostracized. You will not find one black person in that town.
But how is this allowed though?
Even municipal work, literally all it's like you're saying, like a Bantustan, it's like a self-sufficient village. Because they don't, I think because as long as no one like bothers them, they just get on with themselves. Apparently they're just all self-sufficient. Yeah. So,
but if you want to be self-sufficient and you don't want to be part of the country, you do not get to vote. Sorry. Like
that would be why are they even voting? I don't know. This needs to be a whole other discussion.
But you kind of want to be outside of South Africa and be inside of South Africa at the same time. That's weird. Yeah. Should pick a struggle.
Well, I think that's why that one person voted EFF. Maybe they had enough. That's hilarious. So that person must be shitting very. But
so,
EFF not growing. So you're thinking the votes would have gone to EFF if not for MK?
They went for MK. He explained it. I watched that briefing. I've never seen him so quiet and so humble. Because Floyd accepted. I was deep in the pit of the conspiracy theories. But then I had to keep my head on straight. And I watched all the media briefings with the MK, with Mkhondwe where they've got their spokesperson is hot. I just so I was like, who's this? So I watched that briefing and then I watched Floyd address the media, and he was very, very passive. But Julius was equally passive, and he addressed the media, and he said that if EFF looks like it didn't grow because the people who were initially tired of the ANC went with them, but then they found a home in Jacob Zuma's party, which was their actual home. So he said, and then it was like then they need to go where they're welcome and they need to go. It really is okay. And then I think one of the media asked him if they were going to contest the votes and stuff. And then he was like, we can't be doing your dirty work all the time. You want us to, when it's convenient for you, we're loud and amazing. And when it's not, you don't vote for us. So we're not going to do your dirty work. And I think that that's valid and it's fair, because I think that as a country where we know that they draw a big line of contention. I mean, I was watching Dan, I was watching Dan's feedback regarding the EFF, and I was watching, forget this other TikToker who's got lots of tattoos, Darren. And they were saying that the EFF was actually the official opposition. If you look at the way that the DA's policies lean slightly towards socialism, and then the ANC's sudden NHI bill introduction, which was a socialist move because a lot of the EFF's policies are quite socialist based. And then if you look at the MKs as well, very similar. So they were saying in terms of policy, they're the trendsetters because there was a big, I think everybody was scared that people would be not deterred, would be inclined to move that way because one is Julius and he's very charismatic. He's a great speaker. And they've had so much traction over the years. So he was saying, listen, like, we can't be doing your dirty work for you all the time. Like, when it suits you, you call on the EFF. And then when it doesn't, you don't vote for us. So no, we're not going to be saying anything about voter rigging. It's not going to change that much. But I do really think that it's interesting that there were ballots found with their papers that hadn't been registered. And I think that that is astounding to me. I think, and a lot of the parties complained. The PA, wow, stole a lot of votes from the DA. And if the votes actually counted,
9%, I think, in the Western Cape.
That's a big number.
Which is, but I mean, also this is, I think, I don't know, they were in the last election, so they've grown quite a bit since then as well. But that also just shows the loss of faith. Look, loss of faith in DA and ANC. And this is what we were saying from the beginning, like, there's more than just the big three, which is like the EFF, which is now actually MK, it looks like. But I mean, ANC-DA, we've seen these guys in and out for 30 years. Well, not in and out, but through the 30 years. And it's just like, at this point, between the two of them, it's like a dick measuring competition. But anyways,
I think they're going to go into coalition together because I think hearing talks about Tony Leon. Are you not retired? Are you not racist? Sit down. I do not want to be governed by Tony Leon. I'm sorry.
Souls must also take a seat.
He needs to sit the fuck down. Like, all of them at this point, give the other kids a chance. And I think it was a strategic move. I think the people who benefited most from this election were the ANC, even though they lost majority for the first time in 30 years. But the EFF, because I mean the DA, because if you've seen Mr. Johnny, he's been very presidential lately. He's addressing the media. So I think that they're in talks to see how this is going to work. But he might be our next president. Who knows what they're going to agree.
I don't know if Steenhuisen will be. I think, in my personal opinion, do not quote me or think that I'm a proper political analyst or anything like that. Anybody, please. But in my opinion, I think best foot forward would be an ANC-DA coalition. And I'll explain in a moment why. DA-ANC coalition, and to keep Squirrel or Cupcake or Cyril, however you want to refer to him, keep him as president for continuity's sake. But then I reckon the DA will demand that the Parliament Speaker be DA. And then, like, two of the most contested positions at the moment, I was watching the ENCA this morning, is Home Affairs. And I did take a photo just so that I wouldn't forget.
Should be Home Affairs.
It was Home Affairs and Finance.
Yes, because where's our money going? And I think, because I also remember
why are there still so many undocumented human beings in South Africa? Why are these people undocumented? They don't have an identity. They don't have a home, essentially. They're voidless, if you know what I mean. So it's like, that needs to be rectified. We saw what happened with manifesto. We do not need any more repeats. But also, like, that's such a big part of your identity, having your ID. So how many people sitting undocumented that also weren't able to vote?
My mom couldn't vote because she's got 2 IDs. And they opened a case of stolen identity at Home Affairs for her. So things like her internet banking, she can't get. Like, it has such a big impact. She needs to go to Lesotho, and they refused to issue that passport for her. So she didn't partake in the election.
That must have killed your mom, because I know how political your household is. She must have been devastated.
She's not okay.
I would not be okay.
I think that we in store for a lot of surprises. Because I remember even in that sign out with the EFF, Julius was like, "Hey man, who knows, we'll probably be making a lot of your decisions very, very soon. So I don't know what talks they're going to be having. I think that if this is to work properly, I think there needs to be a representation of all the parties. The top four needs to be represented, because the PA, Gaten McKenzie's party, has proven that they can govern well. When they were mayor of that district in the Karoo, he had 100 days and he made a significant amount of changes.
Yeah.
And that didn't fall on deaf ears. People voted for him because they saw that and they were inspired. And I think that he is a voice for the marginalized. The colored community needs a voice as strong as he is to, one, discuss their issues, because very often and a lot of the time we discuss issues amongst Black people and white people, but the colored voice isn't heard as much. And that is an identity that is equally as painful, their history. So I'm very happy for him. I think that's well earned and well deserved because he's proven his stripes. I think that we can say very cleanly, when the EFF is around, parties behave a little bit better. So they're the little markers in the sand, you understand, in terms of governance. I think that maybe hey, don't shoot me. I think Muyiseni needs to be the Speaker of Parliament. I think he will drive it well.
Who's that?
Ndlozi. He's that short one with the dreadlocks. He's so cute.
What is the
Speaker
for EFF?
Yes. Okay. I think that he should be the Speaker in Parliament. This is me just chucking it out there. I think that they have proven, for young people, they've proven that they are able to rally people. They rally people very well. Once they speak, people listen and everybody fears them. And I think that that's good. You need to have somebody that keeps you accountable, because absolute power corrupts. And we've seen this. If the DA gets absolute power, what is going to happen? No party should have absolute power. And I'm scared for a coalition between the two. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm scared for a coalition between the ANC, and I'm scared for a coalition between the DA, because we've seen who those funders are. And what do they have in common? The same funders. They're the same beneficiaries of the same people who are funding them. So they're
is the
pushing a
EFF
certain agenda.
So
I know this.
So the thing is, none of us are safe when it comes to that, because the EFF actually, was it actually there? Bosa was one of those two authors. And and then ANC and DA.
But then also we've got hot on the heels President Zuma. I'm sorry, there was a... Oh my
gosh, I still just cannot believe it. It just so this is why I was saying in the beginning why I'm not surprised about MK parties, because we saw in 2021 when he was supposed to go to prison because he did not appear in court, and KZN kicked off. They did solicit violence. There were people who died, people who got injured, complete and utter chaos and mayhem. Or a man who's been criminally convicted, who's been accused of rape, who has over 100 fraudulent charges, who is responsible for state capture. It baffles me how he has such a following, but he does. And we cannot forget that or ignore that. And we saw that in 2021. No, I did not think anything would change now. I don't know. And I mean, there's also another conspiracy of the MK called the Big Lie conspiracy or theory. And I was reading about it on the Daily Maverick, which is very interesting, which is also very interesting to see, because now comes into the question of EFF and MK calling the IEC into question. MK started last year already to bash the IEC and their credibility already last year, slowly starting the seeds and then saying that it's rigged and corrupt or things, and starting to plant these seeds and more so. And then all these things coming out, and it's over months. And I mean, also in the MK party saying they want to abolish the constitution. I think it works very well in their strategy and plan to say the IEC is corrupt, this, that, and the other. Meanwhile, part of their agenda is to get rid of the constitution. So why not sow the seeds of doubt in good political institutions like the IEC, which has been credible in the past? We don't actually have a reason to doubt them, because also the thing is, bringing up the voter rigging, I'm very curious to understand how people think it was, because yes, the ANC benefits better off than a lot of other parties, but they also don't. They lost their majority. If they were voting to rig an election, I don't think they would put themselves to 40%, and the DA would not keep themselves at 22. If they did, that's a much longer foresight game than what we saw for them to go into this coalition, because no one is actually winning at this point, except for one, democracy, which is the voters show the representation, and that more parties are getting a voice and a seat at the table. Reason why I said best foot forward would be that coalition is because the other option is that then, which would be a great option, but I think for a business and international climate when it comes to foreign investments, it will seem unstable or unstable if we just leave parliament as is and people actually use it how it's supposed to be, which is a democracy, parliamentary votes. We vote, majority vote rule. So you can't just throw bills through just because you feel like it, like this fucking NHI thing, which the ANC managed to push through because they had the majority. So if this was a last minute populist flinging, vote slinging type thing to try and win, and I think that's why they retained quite a few votes. Otherwise, I think they would have lost a lot more. It was a last dying call. And the reason why I say DA and ANC coalition report would be better, because if we rule in the minority system, we don't know what that's ever been like. We've never seen a government that hasn't been a majority. So it'll be a little bit unstable, I think, while they start finding their feet to regulate that. And it'll make businesses and foreign investment very unsure. The current economic climate is already very unsure leading up to the elections because no one knew what was going to happen. A lot of businesses halted and slowed and pushed back projects. So with a minority government, it could just cause that problem with investment again and business operating. We need foreign investment. So the reason
too
why
much foreign investment, brand.
Not too much. No. We do not have too much. Well, we have too much theft, which is why the foreign investment is not working as it should be, and why we are not operating as we should be, or why our taxes and everything and infrastructure. But just let me finish my point before we carry on. So there's a clinical psychologist, Jordan B. Peterson. I think I've spoken to him about him before. He's a very controversial character. I find him absolutely fascinating in everything that he talks about. So he's got two books that are the one I've read. Well, he's got more than two, but the ones that I'm going to refer to, there's 12 Rules of Life, which I've read, really interesting as an individual in terms of how you conduct yourself, etc., in society, and 2, which is Beyond Order. And one of those chapters, he says, do not denigrate current standing systems, rather work to improve them. And what he's talking about is, we know there's problems with the institutions. We know there's problems with structures. We know there's issues with the capitalism that's been going. But if we completely flip this thing on its head, everything is then archaic. It's every man for himself. There's reasons why these systems have been in place. They have worked. They've proven that they've worked. Maybe not the way that they should be because people have manipulated them. Or maybe, but there's always room for improvement. That's why tech is always updating. People are always training. There's always room for improvement. So rather than strapping it and saying, fuck this and throw it out, what are you going to do then? No one has an idea of what's going to work. Well, so rather have that stability of, okay, we know this works. It's not how we'd like it, but change takes time. That's why, like, also with the government and them coming in, it takes time. So ANC-DA, we know. We can keep them accountable. Now we've also got all these other parties that are in there that will keep them accountable in Parliament, that will hold them to it. We also, as citizens, need to be more responsible in holding our political leaders accountable, because we're just like, and we'll rather state-proof ourselves, which is also not okay. I was listening to a business podcast where they were talking about how you need to state-proof yourself when investing in South Africa or as individuals. That's not how we should be operating, not how we should be thinking. We know how they operate. A lot of their policies are actually quite similar across the board. So that's why there could be quite a lot of good alignment. Sorry, my mic dropped. I'm not using the whole thing. So there can be good alignment. And so then we can start, changing, making it fit for purpose. This NHI bill, we don't get rid of the private sector because that makes no sense. So they have a lot of similar policies, whereas I think DA has slightly more business-focused policies and ANC more socialist, communist. So having that come together could marry quite well.
Okay. I'm taking in the information.
Yeah. No, it's a lot, but that's why I was trying to look at the elections with different lenses after, someone brought it up or I watched it somewhere where they said about Jordan Peterson's, do not denigrate current standing systems. And it hit me, and I was just like, that's actually so true, because imagine if we got a completely new government in, we wouldn't know, it would be much scarier than it is now, I think, because, and the thing is, they also, let's be honest, they would still stay within the confines of the institution that's been created already anyways. Yeah.
My discomfort with, I think, a DA coalition is why are retired politicians coming out of the woodwork?
Well, that makes no sense.
That is really weird to me. Why does Tony Leon have to have a say, and why does Helen Zille have to have a say? Proved racist out here. That makes me uncomfortable as a Black South African. Like, what do you need to say to me? You've already said enough. The comments he made about Muslim Amani were uncalled for. Do you understand? Like, absolutely
what did he say?
For.
Was it recent?
No, it was a long time ago. When Musi stepped down, I don't want to take this out of context, and I will have to find it. Please put a blurb here at the end, where he almost called him like a token and an experiment, like they were just trialing the Black person type of thing. So I think that I'm anxious. I'm going to be honest. I'm very anxious about what's to come. I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm happy or I'm sad. I'm happy that democracy has prevailed. I'm happy that people have voted. I'm happy that people informed themselves and educated themselves. I hope they would lose. I think that's the one that I need to just let go. I'm disappointed that they had so much support. I think the ANC. I didn't know who I wanted to win. I just know the three. Hey, yo, bro. I know it's
the four now, including the MK. That's also,
you know how I feel about Jacob. I have a very specific way that I feel about him, but
this end just really is the naughty stepchild. Like,
I love them for standing up for themselves. You know that I agreed quite a lot with their policies. I think that I'm all in favor for language, and you know this about me. I can go on and on and on and on and on about why I think that is important. We have 11 official languages. We need to preserve our cultures. I really feel very strongly about that. You can learn English later. I'm always of that view. You can learn it later in your life. It really doesn't.
Carry on. We've spoken about the languages so many times, Seems. Languages, you know, and it's tied with culture. I do know.
Yes,
looking at the lead and everything, that can't be the only reason why you like their policy.
I like a lot of their policy because of that, because the language is tied to identity. That is what I'm saying. And when you look at it that way, if you erase somebody's language, you erase a large part of the identity. I have friends who are adopted that only speak English. And do you know the psychological damage that causes for them? Because the world isn't white, Nikki. The world is bilingual. South Africa is multicultural and multilingual. As a Black child, wherever you go, you're going to be surrounded by other Black people. So there's an identity, and I've spoken to you about this, where I said to you, I specifically I do not befriend people who call me a coconut. If that is how you view me, and I'm speaking specifically for Black people now, if a Black person refers to me as a coconut, I don't befriend you, because what is going to happen is I'm going to now audition every single time that we're together, where I'm in a state where I have to prove my Blackness to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? I now have to prove that I am your version of Black, or what you think a Black person should be. So when I say to you, I like that policy, language is a massive thing. I'm completely marginalized in terms of language.
But MK is not the only one that had that policy in place. There were other parties, IFPs also about that. There were other parties that we read that were for the languages as well. No, actually say they didn't have that, but I think BOSA did include languages, home languages. So MK is not the only party. That's what I'm saying. They're not the only party that focused on language or traditional values. PA also focused on traditional values.
Did. So that's the one I remember the strongest, because that's the last one that I read. That's why I'm going on about it. And I'm going to be still very clear. Me, you know, I feel about Jacob. I did a whole historical investigation on him. I am very clear about how I feel. Like his policies, I like some of the EFF's policies as well. There are some that did make sense to me in terms of education. And you can see how they've swayed everybody to turn slightly socialist or have socialist tenets in their policies and their manifestos. So they've been quite the influence. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to work. If they marry or everybody marries, what's going to happen? What's going to be the give and take? Because we've never found out, the only time we found ourselves here was at 94 with the National Party and the ANC and all the other parties. You know, now it's 30 years later. It's a watershed moment now. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, so I just want to end it off here because we're going to have time cut off from us in a second. But Rose, most of my money while watching the ENCA live broadcasting, he said he's fun. He's like, this is also not my first rodeo. I've done elections before. The results are what they are. IEC did the best they could, etc. He says, but now moving forward, he says we all need to meet and discuss what are the next steps. He says, but he wants it to be transparent and for public to be able to see and witness. So no backdoor dealings and all that stuff. And I remember when him and Mashaba from Action SA also spoke, both of them also, and I think a lot of these younger parties, new parties coming up, so like PA and those kinds as well, all saying more transparency in terms of governance and where money is going and who's getting what, a lot more transparency. So I'm hoping that the ANC and DA are going to hear that moving forward from all these other parties saying, be more transparent. So that's all we can hope for, really, is the transparency, because next thing it's like, oh, the NHI bill happens and no one even knew it was, it's a thing until it was. So I think, well, we still don't really know what's happening, so we can't say much more other than that. I suppose it's just a quick opinion-based and thoughts of current standings. But as the results unfold and what next steps come through, we will be with you.